Hey friends, family. This is my first time going live, but I want to share my experience. I feel like I have a calling in my life to share my health testimony. So let me think where I should begin. This little background information. I um, I am a CODA, which means I come from a deaf family, and that alone is a whole nother story in itself. But I'm going to start with my addiction that I used to have. I funny, I never thought that I had an addiction, but I started gambling back in my 20s, and ironically, I considered myself a Christian because I still went to church and I prayed all the time, and but I guess over the years it did progress, and it got worse after my husband passed away. I know that I kind of, you know, annoyed my family with my problem. Um, I sometimes would borrow money, and I mean, one sin led to another sin, and I don't want to really get into all the details of all the sin that added up from my addiction. But I'm going to start with when my husband passed away. Um, I guess my gambling started to get worse, and I was my husband was a provider, so he pretty much took care of me. But it got to the point where I lost my home, and I almost lost my car, and but so when I went, okay, I kind of lost my place. Let's see, where was I? Okay, so, yeah, when my husband passed away, I had asked one of my deaf friends if she wanted to go to the casino with me. And like I said, I grew up in a deaf family, so I had, a lot of deaf friends. And so I had this one deaf lady said, yeah, that sounds like fun. I haven't been to one in a long time. And she went with me. And she's was a widow like me too. So we went to the casino, and I like to play blackjack and poker, and she liked to play the slot machines, and yeah, we drink, and she liked to drink, and but anyways, I lost some money there, and then I went over and asked her if I could borrow a little money from her. And, she loaned me some money, and I go back to the blackjack table, and, for any gamblers out there, you know how that goes. It's up and down, and, most of the time, it's always a loss. So I went back, and, I asked her, if I could borrow again, because I, of course, lost all of my money. And I, borrowed from her like two, 3, 4 times. I don't know. I lost track. But so after borrowing so many times, I think I lost, and I said, well, let's just go ahead and leave, and we'll try this again next week. I just didn't have any luck, but no worries. I'm going to pay you right back, and I just need to win big, and that's easy to do. So don't worry about it. So we left, But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to pay her back? Because I didn't know where I was going to get the money from. And I was already struggling since my husband passed away. So I ended up going back a couple of days later, and I called her and asked her if she wanted to come with me again. And she's like, "Oh, I thought you said we were going to wait a week." And I'm like, "No, I'm feeling lucky. Let's try this again." So I only had $200 to my name. And of course I wanted to show her I had, some money that I wasn't going, but in the back of my mind, I knew I was going to probably end up having to borrow more money from her. So we go, and I, take out my last 200, and I, got on the blackjack table and lost that right away. And she was, playing slot machines, and I went back over and I asked to borrow from her again. And I just kept borrowing and losing. And I'm like, okay, I'm not having any luck here. Then all of a sudden there was a code called, and they started closing down all the tables. And, my deaf friends asking me, "Hey, what's going on? Why are they closing all the tables?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm not sure. Because I know the casinos are open 24/7, so it must be something pretty serious." So I asked one of the dealers, and one of the dealers said, "Yeah, it was a code. I don't remember the color code, but it said that there was a gunman outside the casino." And somewhere in my conscience, I thought about it. I said, would I really want to, would I want to die in a casino? So anyways, I, had explained it to my friend. Yeah. There's a shooter outside the casino, so they're just waiting to get that all taken care of. And I said, well, anyways, let's just go ahead and call it a night. And, we'll do this another time, and don't worry, I'll pay you back. And so we go out to the car, and I'm thinking I only owe maybe $1,000 or $2,000. I didn't think it was going to be as much as she said it was. And when she told me how much I owed her, I thought, oh boy, but I didn't want her to worry. But I was just thinking, how am I going to pay this, pay all of this back to her? So I was really counting on just going back and winning big, and just try to pay her back, as soon as I can, because, I didn't want to have to owe anybody anything. So we're out in the car and we're talking about it, and I said, "So now how much is it I owe you?" And then, she tells me, and I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, the ATM don't even let you take that much out. And she's like, "No, I've got all the receipts here. I'll prove it to you." And, she pulled out all the receipts, and I'm like, okay, I guess she's right. I just lost track. So I said, okay, no worries. I'll pay you back weekly, or, anytime, I get paid, I'm going to, pay you back little by little, but I can easily win that money back. And, I just got to win big one time. It's not difficult. And, I'll pay it back to you. So, I go back, and, I'm real stressed out because I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I can't even really get my own bills paid. Because my husband was the provider, and my income I just blew it at the casino all the time. I had a real problem, and so my two youngest still lived with me. And my youngest daughter wanted to move in with my, I have five adult children, and my youngest wanted to move in with my second oldest. And I remember before we ended up here, moving into my second to oldest daughter's house, she was looking to buy a home, her and her husband, and we came and looked at, this house. And there were just a few things I noticed about it, and it felt a little eerie, and in the basement, it seemed a little colder than, a typical basement. And there was a long hallway with the back bedroom in the basement, and there was like rosary beads with a cross hanging from the window. And then upstairs in the pantry, we opened it up, and there was a bottle of holy water. So I said, okay, whoever lived here is, very Catholic. And, I don't know what the deal was with the holy water, if they were using it for, anointing on the sick. I think that's what they use it for. Or, then the thought crossed my mind, like, was somebody possessed? Or anyways, it just seemed like, they went ahead and decided to buy the house. They moved in. But it just seemed like, there just a lot of accidents were happening. It just seemed like everybody's prone to getting accidents, falling down the steps, and just a lot of injuries. And I just kind of felt like maybe there's, paranormals going on. My youngest daughter wanted to move in with my second oldest daughter, Brandy. And so my youngest Elaine moved in with Brandy, and I thought, well, that's really brave of you. I said, are you going to stay in that basement? And she said, yeah. I said, okay. So she had moved in and stayed in the basement. And it wasn't long after she moved in, like a couple of weeks later, she had a night terror. And she said there was a demon that was standing at the foot of her bed. And the demon was a female demon girl, just asked her, do you accept me? And she woke up and she freaked out about that. And then there was a closet in that long hallway. The closet door had opened up by itself after that. So it was like, a demonic attack, and then the paranormal was happening. So then my ex-husband was upstairs babysitting, so she had called him to come down and, because she was afraid to get out of her bed. So then she, went upstairs and she called me and she said, Mom, I'm moving back home. Like, yeah, this place is, got paranormas, and I am not staying another night here. So she ended up moving back in with me. And in the meantime, I'm still struggling to make ends meet because, I was reckless with my finances. And so she moves back in, and it wasn't long after that, I had lost my home and almost, lost my car on top of that. And so we all had to end up moving, back in with my daughter Brandy to her house. And but I was like, none of us are going to sleep in the basement. So we made that deal. So we move in, and I, in the meantime, was trying to pay back my friend, and, I went back to the casino on my own. And when I went back to the casino, as I was driving, I started to, I was thinking, and I started to pray, and I said, God, just let me win, just one more time. Just let me win big. And I promise I won't ever go back. And then I just kind of stopped myself. I said, whoa, wait a minute. Do I really mean that? Like, am I really going to stop? And I was thinking about, for how many years I've been doing this, and, you know, I like going, and, it was helping with my depression and just kind of filling that void since um, you know, especially since my husband passed away. And, and, I was just kind of talking to myself and praying at the same time. And then that's when I said, okay, no, I can't pray this. I'm asking God to help me to sin. I knew that much, that's not a kind of prayer I could be asking for. So I said, I need to get a little more specific here with my prayer. So I prayed that God, I said, God, I had to think about a little bit, like, what is it that I really need? And what do I need to pray for? And I said, okay, I know, what the problem is. The problem is I like to gamble. This is the problem. So I said, let me just pray that, so I prayed to God, God help me to not like gambling. And that was my prayer. So, I went back to the casino, and of course, I lost, and still trying to get out of my debt, and trying to get my reckless life back together. I came back, and then wasn't long after that. I would say maybe about 8-9 months out after my husband passed away. It was in August. I can't remember the exact date, but the year was in 2021. I fell asleep, and I had this dream. There was a slot machine in front of me, and it was glowing. I mean, it was calling me. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know where I'm at. That's, the same casino that I always go to. And so I walk up to it, and I'm ready to play. Then all of a sudden, it was like a code. And then lights out. And the code, interestingly enough, was, like the code that actually happened when I was there. Only, when I was there, there was a shooter outside of the casino, but this was in my dream, and there was a code called, and then, the lights went out. And the first thing I thought is, oh, it must be a storm outside, a power outage. I said, well, let me go find my friend. So I turn to my left, and I'm like, wow, this is really dark, like really like black, pitch black. And I said, well, let me turn to the right. And I turned to the right, and it's the same thing. It's pitch black. And I feel, I started to instantly know I was like in a whole nother realm. And that darkness, it was like the abyss. It was so black, and it just feels like it goes on, like it's way out there. And I didn't want to move from where I was at. I was just like frozen, and I just like knew I wasn't in my flesh. I felt I was, it was my soul there. And I didn't want to go down, because I felt like I could, like it dropped, like it just goes. And all I knew is I wanted to go up. And when I tried to go up, I was hitting a ceiling. And it was like a ceiling you couldn't couldn't see it, but I, I, that's when I knew. I was like, okay, I'm trapped. I'm trapped in this place. And, I just, I felt like, it was just so dark. And it felt like a whole nother world. And, I did look up this word, Hades, which is found in the New Testament. It's a Greek word, and if you look up the meaning of it, it says it's the abyss, chaotic depths. So hell does have levels, because I know I was in hell, and it. If you look up the word Hades, it also says it has it's a distinct realm, a temporary prison for demons, deep pit abyss, and it represents the lowest part of underworld. So, from my experience, for the 1 minute that I was there, it was, it was like an underworld. And when I compared my, from what I seen to other people's hell testimony, the way they describe, caves and landscapes, hell really is a whole nother world, and it's under it. You really feel down. So, within that 1 minute, it was like, it opened my eyes. I knew why I was there. And I knew like immediately that it was hell. And, all I could think was Jesus. And I begged. I just was like, I begged for Jesus. I said, Jesus, forgive me, forgive me. I was like begging to get out of there. And it felt like when I was begging and, praying, like it wasn't leaving that ceiling, like it wasn't being received on the other end. This is how I know it was hell, because when you're here and you pray, not even when you pray, his presence is here, but even more when you pray, it's being received. It's going somewhere. When you're in hell, it goes nowhere. It's separation, complete separation from God. You are, abandoned there. And I don't know how to describe that, how scary that is, and just the torment. And within that 1 minute that I was there, I started to hear just this background noise, off somewhere in a distance. I was like just kind of in a fetal position in my soul, not with my flesh, but I could move as if I was in my flesh. But I didn't want to go anywhere. I stayed just like this. And that was for a minute. I can't imagine, the eternity in this place. So, because 1 minute of that was torture. But in the background, I was hearing, it sounded like the way like a rusty wheels would sound on a train, just going over the track, just this real screechy, very, I don't know. I don't know what the sound was, but that's the best way I could describe it. And it was not comforting at all. I was like, no. So then I woke up, after I, had, prayed, for Jesus to forgive me. And, when I woke up, the first thing I thought is, oh, Brandy's house. Here we go. I'm getting, a demonic attack like my daughter had, and all these things that's been going on in this house. That was the first thing I blamed it. I blamed it on that. And then I don't know, I just heard this voice in my head that said, God fearing. And I'm like, God fearing. I'm like, whoa, wait, I'm confused. I'm like, was this dream from God, or was this from, the devil? And, because my understanding of what hell is fire, the lake of fire. That's what I have heard. I'm still a baby Christian. I'm still, trying to learn His Word, and I'm forgetful. But I told myself I am going to keep, reading King James Version. I'm going to keep reading the Bible. Just keep listening to it. Every time I drive, I'm always listening. Until the day I die, I am going to learn His Word. And one thing I know for sure is that the kingdom is very, very holy. It's not as easy as people think it is to get into the kingdom. And that verse about it's Matthew chapter 7, 13 and 14. Enter ye at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, which is hell. And narrow is the way, straight the gate which leads to life, and few find it. So, and it requires a holy life. And God has a dangerous side, and you can't be a lukewarm Christian and think you're gonna make it into the kingdom. And there's a lot of Christians. I think there's a lot of people that think they're going, but they're not. And that's what was I going to say? Okay, I forgot. Sorry. So yeah, after I woke up from that, that's the first thing I thought was, is this from God or is this from the devil? So, and then I heard the, God fearing, and that's when I realized that, hell is not just a lake of fire. I went to scripture just to see, is it black like that? And I found it. It is. It's the Matthew chapter 25, specifically verse 30. Where it says, cast ye unprofitable servant into outer darkness, which was hell. There'll be the weeping and gnashing of teeth. So, and just seeing that verse, I wasn't a profitable servant. And the verses prior to that talk about how God gives talents. He gave 5 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent to 3 different persons, and they were to go and get, the first 5 went and got 5 more, and then the second one went and got 2 more, and then the one with the 1 talent just buried it in the earth. And the way I understand it is he just just mingled in with the world, and was not a servant, a profitable servant. And, this was the parable that Jesus uses. And, I was not a profitable servant. And so, there were no fruits. I didn't have the fruits, the fruit of the Spirit. So I just want to put that out there. When I did wake up from that, it was so powerful that I wasn't sure if I was in the body or out of the body. I've been saying out of body experience because I've never had um, an experience like, I mean, a dream that so real that I mean, it felt like my soul really had left and came back in. And when it came back in to my body, it was like I woke up and I just felt like it, like it literally went somewhere and came back because it felt kind of um, new. I can't say new because that sounds like, I would say like fresh, like something was just, I don't know. I really don't know how to describe that, but um so yeah, and I was just kind of like cold and like numb, and but I went to scripture just to verify that outer darkness, that abyss that I seen, and that confirms it. I'm like, oh yeah, I seen it, and I am God fearing, and I lose sleep over sin, especially if I I I have fell into sin. I mean, we all will, but I mean, I've gotten saved um since of August 2021. I've been delivered, but I have fell a few times, and yes, I mean, I know there is his grace, but I also know that his grace cannot be taken for granted. And um and yeah, if I lose sleep over sin. So that's just how serious, our time here is. So I mean, we are called to be profitable servants and, be witnesses, however you do it, with the talents he gives us, whether, it's helping someone, just having the love of God, his light in your heart, and demonstrating that, whether it's through scriptures, or sharing a testimony, music, just any way you can do it. But um, I feel like, I have a calling on my life to share this, and I hope that this will, reach somebody out there. But it's, yeah, it's real. And I just pray that, this will reach somebody out there, and that God will use me to be, a profitable servant. So that's all I got to say, and I'm glad I'm able to get the courage up to share this and get this out there, and hope you all have a God bless day. Love you all. Take care.